there is value in diversity by itself.
Right.
And so that diversity, when you're looking at merit, that there may be a need to say, oh, we need more people of East Asian descent. Ooh.
Hey everyone, it's Presley and Dad. I'm here, and today we're doing a Presley's perspective on immigration, I think?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So we're trying to, like once a week or so, whatever, once at some interval, do a conversation about current events.
Right.
And what's going on in the world. And part of your speech in Seattle next week is kind of about us talking about things that are going on in the world to sort of prepare you and get you thinking about them.
Right.
So that you're ready to take over and solve these problems for us in a few years. So,
I wish it was only a few.
one of the big things that's going on right now in the news is like DACA and what's going on with DACA and immigration in general, like a broader immigration reform. And so, do you know what DACA is at all?
I think I used to. I don't remember.
But you don't know what it is. Like,
No.
if I say DACA, you don't know what that means.
Not really.
I thought it was DACA.
It could be DACA too.
DACA?
Yeah, whatever.
DACA.
It depends on your whole, like, should the sounds in the acronym sound like the word that they're replacing because it's deferred action. So it would be DACA, or DACA. I don't know. I don't care.
I don't either.
Deferred action on childhood arrivals. That's what it stands for.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Anyway. So just in general, let's talk a little bit about immigration and immigration control is really sort of what this is all about, right?
Okay.
So immigration, people who are not from the United States coming to live in the United States.
Right.
Okay, not visitors. That's kind of a different thing.
Right. People
but,
who live.
But let's talk primarily about people coming to live here and work here and sort of set up their lives here. Right. So do you believe that we should have control over that process, or should it be just wide open? Anybody that wants to come here can come here, and we don't track it, we don't pay any attention to it. Just people can come move here and live here if they want.
Well, I know we should track it, but we shouldn't be nearly as strict as we are.
Well, how do you know how strict we are?
I don't know. I have a vague concept of. I don't do a lot of research, but I have a vague concept of the fact that it's fairly strict. And we've talked a little bit about it before, the process of coming here.
Right, but so what do you think we should do? What makes sense to you from an immigration control standpoint?
I'm not sure yet. I mean, like, I tried to focus most of it towards this focus most of my thinking about it to this conversation. But I really think that we should, like, there's no real way to prevent people, like bad people, from moving here. I guess there's a higher chance if we let more people in, but there's still like ways to get.
I don't know that that's true. Like, I think that screening people,
like criminal records
that are coming in, is, I mean, that's a way to pay attention. Like, I don't think that there's a way to say, oh, you can't do anything about it. You can have zero impact on whether bad people come in or don't come in.
Through it.
There are still ways to get around it, right? But that is, like, this is a really classic argument about laws too, right? So yeah, you can make murder illegal, but people are still going to commit murder. So why should murder be illegal? Like, it doesn't stop all murders. So murder should probably just be legal. Like, that's not an argument that holds any water, right? You can't say this isn't 100% effective, so we should do nothing.
No.
That's
not
never
what I'm
the way
saying.
to go,
I'm just
right?
saying there's no real way to stop.
There's no way to stop it. So you're always trying to make it better. You're always trying to improve it. And the question is whether the cost of making it better is too great.
Right.
That's where you always kind of have to draw the line and figure it out. So it's never an absolutist. Either you stop 100% of it or you do nothing. Like, that's just not. That's kind of a non-starter. So what is kind of in the middle? Like, do we screen people that are requesting to move here? So do people have to ask if they can move here, so that we can know who's trying to move here and we can do some research on them and decide if it's okay for them to come here or not?
Yeah.
Like, that's sort of question one, I guess, sort of fundamental.
Yeah, I think people should have to request to, like, gain citizenship, right? And they do.
Well, it's not only citizenship, right? It's also, like, people. You can come here and work and live here without ever becoming a U.S. citizen. So it's more about people coming here and moving to work and live here. Yeah.
Well, you could, like, I assume that when you want to come here for a prolonged period of time, you have to like you have to tell someone.
Yep.
So if you tell someone,
well, those are the rules at least, right? Like you said, there are people that don't follow the rules, but those are the rules. Yeah, you have to ask permission, basically.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I'm basing this kind of off of a video game, but you know, you have to like show your passport and stuff to get into the country for any period of time if you're from somewhere else.
Right.
So they should like screen your chemical background, criminal background, and they check if your face matches the passport, and they check for any obvious fake stuff, and they try and see if the passport's like real.
Yeah, so usually that process starts before. So you're thinking about like border control.
Right.
At the border, when we travel internationally, we have to show our passports, and they ask why we're there and how long we're staying there and stuff, right? So usually, depending on where you're traveling, like some places you can go and just show up at the border with your passport and they'll let you through. But most places you have to, or not most places, but many places you have to sort of request ahead of time and say, hey, I'm coming into the country. Can I get a visa? Can I get permission to come into the country? So they're sort of expecting you when you show up at the border.
Okay.
And then when you show up at the border, they do what you said. They make sure that you are who you are, right?
Right.
But if in general you believe that we should have what would be called border control or border enforcement.
Right? I mean, the borders in Europe are super open, aren't they? Like, no, yeah, Mom was sort of talking about it.
We went through a lot to just go from England to France.
Yeah, not just drive from one place to
well, you know, I think there are...
in Poland, you mean?
Yeah, in Poland, not that part of Europe. Like, in Europe, there's a lot of places with super open borders.
Different countries have very different rules around their border controls.
Right.
For sure. Right?
Right.
And so like you can't kind of have both, I guess, is part of the conversation, right? You can't say, yeah, let's just have wide open borders and anybody can just walk in that they want to, but let's make sure that only good people come in.
Right.
Or that bad people don't come in, really, is a better way. People who are known to be bad, or that we wouldn't want somebody here for whatever reason, that we block those people from coming in. You can't do that if you also just have a wide open border and anybody can walk in that wants to walk in.
Right.
So which do you think is better in one place?
I don't know. I mean, it works in those places.
How do you know that?
Because I mean...
Like, how you like you're making this like absolute assertive statement that it works fine in this other country.
Well,
I'm curious what research that you've
understand.
done about these countries with open immigration policies that leads you to make such an assertive statement.
From what I understand, from what I've seen, it seems to not be like terrible. At least, nothing stands out on me in particular that it is terrible, and it's very wrong. But also, it would be sort of nice to keep people with known criminal backgrounds out.
But you can't do both.
I know.
Like, you can't say this would be great, but you should also do this. You can't do both.
I know. I'm trying to vocalize what my thought process is. I mean, what we already have is like control over borders, right? We already have that.
Some people would say yes, and some people would say no. We do have a process in place for requesting citizenship and requesting to move here and do these kinds of things. But we also have what I guess what you would call porous borders. Like there are checkpoints and you should stop and do things, but there are certainly ways around it. We don't have total control over our entire border.
Right.
So if you don't want to go through a checkpoint, you can just go kind of around and come in a different way. You come in through Canada and walk through the woods, and you can be in America. And you can come in on a ship that's not controlled. Like there are ways to come in without falling, and it's not super difficult.
Yeah.
It's not hard to do. And so people are certainly arguing right now that it should be a lot harder to do. So that we can, so there's like a lot of the debate that's going on right now. So we'll talk about DACA specifically here in a second, but I think a lot of the debate that's going on right now is we have a lot of people in the country who came here illegally. Right? So they didn't follow the rules to get here, but they're here now. And for DACA specifically, those are people who were brought here as children. So it's not like they decided to break the laws, like they were 1 year old and they got brought here. And they've grown up here and they've lived here their whole life, right? But they came here illegally, like they don't have permission, let's say, to be living here in the country. And so when you find one of those people through something else, then should that person be sent back to their country of origin because they're here illegally, right? That's what DACA is about. Like kids that were brought here very young should they be sent home? And so there's the broader conversation about you have these millions and millions of people who live here who came here illegally, but they're living here and they're working here and they're doing all of these things, and assuming they don't commit a crime. Like if you get arrested for doing something, and in the process of processing you through the legal system, we find out that you're here illegally, most people would agree that yeah, you could probably be deported as part of that. As part of now you're a criminal and you're here and you've done something wrong and you came illegally, we're going to send you back where you came from. Or you may even go to jail here and spend time in jail, and when your jail time is up, you get deported back to the country you came from at the end of that time. Because you're here, you came here illegally and you committed a crime, right?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on the kind of crime. I don't know, crime is confusing in my head. Well, not crime itself, but what to do about it. Because, like, I don't know if you should...
So it's a very different conversation if we're going to talk about you shouldn't punish people for committing crimes.
No. It depends on the crime. Okay, we'll end it there because that's too much of a long
So let's say felonies, like serious crimes.
Yes.
If someone commits a felony, and they're here illegally, they should probably be deported.
Right.
Maybe they are deported immediately, maybe they serve their time and they're deported, whatever. That's a part of it.
Yeah.
But for the millions of people who live here and don't commit any crimes, I'm not talking about speeding or something like that, right?
Okay.
People who do, live here for a long time and do what they're supposed to do, but for whatever reason, you find out that they're here illegally, what do we do with those people?
Right.
And so I think most people feel like someone who has lived here for 20 years and paid taxes, and since people even serve in the military and have done like all of these things, that they should probably be allowed to stay here.
Right.
Like there are certainly people on the extremes that feel like everybody should be kicked out, right?
Yeah.
And I think though, the problem that people have about it, the people that are fighting against that as a policy right now, they say what we need to not happen, like we've had these porous borders for a long time and people have been able to come in, and so people have gotten in and they've taken advantage of that and they've been here for a long time, and so I'm not super opposed to those people being able to stay here. But what I don't want to happen is just 10 years from now there's a whole bunch more people that have snuck in, and now we let those people stay, and then 10 years later there's a whole bunch more people who have snuck in, and now we let those people stay. And so you have sort of this de facto open immigration system. Right. If you can sneak in, we let you stay. Like It's illegal and we have laws against it and you can't sneak in, but if you get in, then that's fine, you get to stay. And so I think what people are asking about in a lot of these cases is to say, okay, we're willing to let everyone who's here now stay. Like you've made it, you got in, good on you. We didn't stop you, you can stay. But in exchange for voting for letting the people that are here now stay, we want better border control so that a whole bunch of new people don't come in. Because as soon as we pass a law that says the people that are here can stay, they're afraid that a lot of people that are not here now will be like, oh, if I can sneak in, I get to stay. That's awesome. Like I applied to move there and they said no, but I can just sneak in 10 years if I can stay hidden.
They still find a criminal
record. If I can stay hidden for let's say they're not a criminal record, or there's other reasons they're not allowed. And then they say like, hey, if I can stay there for 10 years, I get to stay. So that's awesome. And so they don't want that incentive for people to try and come here illegally. And so they're saying, okay, we will let everybody who's here stay now, but we want some money to make sure that we're stopping people from coming in from now forward. Right. We're controlling who comes here. And then let's have a bigger conversation about who gets to move here. Is our default policy that is, if you want to move here, the default answer is yes, you get to move here, unless we can find a reason that you can't move here.
Yes.
Which I think is not our policy currently. I think our policy is more, you can't move here unless we can think of a good reason why you should be able to move here, which is a different policy. We have, you'll hear people talk about the lottery, which is a different thing. So we only allow a certain number of people to move here a year, sort of, because we feel like we can only absorb so many people coming in at a time and not disrupt things with new people moving in, right? It's like a job. If I'm at work and I've got 20 people on my team, I can't hire 40 new people in a week. Right. Because I can't onboard all those people and get them up to speed and stuff. So there has to be some sort of rate at which people come in. And so if there are more people applying than there are spots available, because we're only letting so many people in at a time, you have to decide how you let people in. So you can do first come, first serve. Like the first person that applied that's qualified to come in gets to come in. You can do something that's being argued for now, which is more of a merit-based system, like, oh, this person has this advanced degree in this field that we need more of. This person's a PhD data scientist, and we sort of have a need for data scientists right now. Or this person has this really amazing agricultural background, and we're having problems filling some of our farming needs. And so need-based, we need this person. This person's really skilled there. And so even though they're way back in the line, we're going to bring them forward because they bring a lot to the United States. It helps them because they get to move here. It helps us because we need that thing. And so it's very merit-based. Right. There's also like a lottery system that we have in place now in some ways, where you have a bunch of people that are qualified. Like, I think people misunderstand the lottery in some ways, where they think that like we just run a lottery over everybody that lives on the planet, and somebody can just be picked at random to get to move to the United States. Like, that's not really how it works. Like, people apply to move here, they want to move here, they've been qualified, they're all qualified to come in. We've only got one spot, and there's 500 people that want to move here. You can do like a lottery and sort of pick one of these qualified people at random.
Right.
And a lot of times there's a diversity lottery where I believe, I agree, that, and part of your speech in Seattle ties to this, that being around a diverse population is in itself beneficial.
Right.
Like, there is value in diversity by itself.
Right.
And so that diversity, when you're looking at merit, that there may be a need to say, oh, we need more people of East Asian descent to add some sort of complexity to our relationship here, right? Or to what happens in our world and the people that we hang out with and that we meet and that we spend time with. Like, I think all of those things have value. And so it's just sort of this question of, do you do first come, first serve? Do you do something merit-based, or do you do something random? Like, what is the order in which you decide to let people in?
Right.
And that's a big conversation that's going on right now. So Donald Trump is really pushing towards a merit-based system. Like, we look at all of the applicants that want to move here, and we pick and choose who gets to move here based on what they bring that we need. And that there may be, like, a lot of countries do things that are really very regional. So like, this area of the country needs more farm people, this area needs more people in this skill set, this people needs more people in this skill set. And so you can move here if you live in this area, because that's where we have a need for this kind of work. And so there's like some complexity that you can do there.
Yeah.
Or you can do something that's just, like I said, just purely first in, first out.
The problem with the merit-based system is like bias.
Of course.
I mean, there's got to be a lot of bias there, and unless you find a system to have these people only look, like, because either you objectify the people by only looking at them as a degree, or you look at the whole person, and then that has a lot of room for bias.
If you do merit-based, somebody has to decide what's merit.
Right.
What has merit and what doesn't have merit. Like, that's totally true, and that's a problem, and I feel like I'm talking about your friend Merit. As I say that over and over again. But yeah, in any system that is based on determining value, someone has to decide what has value and what doesn't have value. And so again, though, like, you can't be absolutists and say, oh, we can never decide purely what has value, so we shouldn't even try. Like, you still, maybe if there's the right kind of input into the algorithm that you use, if they have this, diversity is a factor. Like, all of these things can be factors in your score, and it can be kind of clear how we score and how we rank people.
And that's a problem, because the way I judge, and this probably is just because I don't understand things great, it's because I judge our country in the way it's going to how similar it is to a dystopia. So, and a lot of dystopian countries and cities, there is the you can only get in if you're super amazing city.
Sure.
That's a thing.
Right.
And it depends if we want our country to be the
so
you're only let in if you're...
That's implementation, though, right? So let's say, aside from implementation, like, ignore how you decide who has value. Like, pretend we solve that problem, and we know how to do it. We can make a really good value judgment about someone's merit. We can force rank people that want to come in based on the value that they bring. Okay. Let's say we know how to do that. We don't. We do not know how to do that. But let's say we know how to do that. Do you think that system is the right system as opposed to just a random system or a first come first serve system?
It really depends on what kind of country you want to run. Because if you want to run the country that is like we have the most elite people and that's who we let in, then that would be the right system for that. But if we want to have
it's interesting though. I think it's interesting that you associate merit with elitism. Right?
Well,
I think it could be the case that during a certain part of the time or during a certain part of the country, like you need farm workers, you need unskilled people to be out picking crops and doing work that's not a PhD physicist that's coming in. It's just we need this area. We need auto workers. We need people in the factories that are doing this kind of work. And it may be more unskilled labor, not elite Ivy education, like that Ivy League kind of stuff. It may be more. It's just what do we need at the time. So don't think of merit as being an actress. don't think of merit as meaning elite. Just think of it as being like need. Like as a country, we kind of need this thing. We're moving into this. We need people that can install solar panels. On roofs right now because we're trying to convert over to solar energy, and so that's a need. And if you have a skill to do that, you know how to do that, that's awesome. We should sort of bring that in. We need teachers. If you're a really good teacher and you've shown in your country that you're an excellent teacher, we need good teachers here. Maybe those people have merit and can come to the top. So it's not at all saying, and maybe the word merit makes people think of that, and that may be part of the conversation that's confusing people, I think. But I think really you're just talking about do you fill a need that we have? A need-based system.
So but the problem with that is, do we want to have a country that just lets people in, and that is no matter if because that still is sort of a problem. Like I guess I can't phrase it as well, but it is, our country is based off is a thing, and when we need something we bring in that thing.
Well, it also starts being a little like old school communist. Right, the stories you hear of like Russia, where like, oh, your 2-year-old daughter is super flexible, she's going to be an Olympic gymnast. Like we're going to take her and put her in this program, or oh, this person's really good at this, and so like the state decides what your skill set is and what your job should be because you bring the most value to the state by doing that.
I didn't know we were talking about children here.
Well, no, I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, that is definitely dystopian.
So that's another part of immigration, though, is what they call chain immigration. And so let's say that, someone wants to immigrate here and they have a skill that we need, and let's say we're doing a merit-based system. Hypothetically, we're doing this merit-based system. So you have this really awesome skill. We really want you to come here and you will help us out a ton. And that person says, okay, well, I want to bring my wife and 3 kids. And they're like, well, your wife's not so super skilled. So you can come here because you meet the merits, but you can't bring your wife and kids.
That's not cool.
And so that's like chain immigration, like how far down the familial relationship. Can you bring your grandparents? Can you bring your cousins? Can you bring your nieces? Can you bring your in-laws? Like if one person gets in, how big is that chain of people they can bring in with them? So that's chain immigration that we're talking about right now.
I think that is...
And needs to be established in some way to say, just because this one person come in, that doesn't mean that their entire family tree can come in. Again, if we're controlling the words at all.
Common etiquette is like you're allowed to reserve at a movie theater 1 or 2 seats. Right. But then if you bring another person, that person can reserve seats. So there should be you can bring this amount of people.
Yeah. So I think there is no. I don't know. That's an interesting question, right? So. It's not your relationship with that other person, it's that everybody gets to bring 2 people with them.
Well, probably more than 2 people. But
I'm just saying, like this is the rule, is that you can, if you get allowed to come here, you can bring 2 people of your choice with you.
Yes.
And those people get screened to make sure that they're
of course. Yeah. And then if one of those people has something we need, then that
person would have to be brought in separately, right? Every person who's selected to come in. You can't say you can bring 2 people and they can bring 2 people and they can bring 2 people and they can bring, because that would just be you pick one person and then you fill up the country, because you've seen the chessboard doubling every time. Like that's exponential growth. You can't do that. So you have to say each person that is selected to come in can bring 2 people in.
Yeah.
And if you want to bring the wife and kid, that's fine. If you want to bring your buddy, your drinking buddy, that's fine.
Right.
But we're going to scan those people and make sure that they're allowed to come in.
Right. And
I think the risk of that is, so rather than saying something like, I think something more common would be like immediate family. So your spouse and your children can come.
What if you're like super close with a distant cousin?
No, but what I'm saying is, I get what you're saying, right? But here's the counter argument to that is, okay, we're going to say 4 people.
Okay.
And you can pick whatever 4 people you want. Like, let's say you've got 5 kids.
Right.
And so if you say immediate family, you can bring your wife and your 5 kids.
Well, I guess it would.
But if you say 4 people, then you can bring your wife and 3 of your kids. And then 2 of your kids have to stay back with the grandparents in whatever country you came from.
That's not
so like
cool either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like all of these are
like immediate family. Like it could be you can bring 4 people, and then you get, if you have more than that immediate family, you can
we're getting way more into implementation than I meant to get into in this. So like just not thinking about the details of the implementation, which is where your brain always kind of wants to go.
Yeah.
Right? How do you solve this problem? What are the details of this kind of thing? The big questions are, do we as a country decide who gets to come here and live here? Period.
Right.
Should we, in general, as a philosophy, should we decide who gets to move here? If that's the case, then another big component of this that I wanted to touch on that I'll try and do quickly because I know we've been talking for a while, like we always do, is the difference between border enforcement and what you call interior enforcement. So this again is the people who get in and have made it and they're living inside the country somewhere illegally. How do you enforce that differently than at the border? Like you have really tight controls at the border and it's really hard to get in. And so you're screening everybody that's coming in and you're trying to keep people from coming in. And then, but if somebody does get in and there's like a population of people that are here illegally, one of the risks of really strict enforcement of that population. So if you find someone here who is living here illegally, you deport them automatically. Okay, let's say that was the baseline rule for what we had happening here. Then that population becomes extremely at risk because someone can take advantage of that population and sort of mistreat that population or do bad things to that population, and those people can't go to the police. Because if they go to the police, they'll get deported.
Right. Isn't that a thing?
Well, no, less. You've got a little bit more protection now so that we protect everyone within. And so if you're coming to the police to report a crime, you shouldn't be scared of being deported that you're reporting a crime, right?
Okay.
So in general, that's the way. Like you would maybe want it to run that way so that you're protecting this population. Other people would say you shouldn't be here illegally, so you should be afraid to go to the police, and you should be deported if you're here in the country illegally. You should follow the legal process to come into the country, right? There is a legal process to come to the country, and that's what you should follow.
That depends on how complicated this legal process is.
But I mean, does it? I don't know. Like that's a really interesting question about. That's the whole like bootlegging question. Hey, it's really hard to get a legal copy of this game, so it's okay if I download it. Right? Yeah, it's really they didn't release this the way that I wanted it, and so I'm just going to steal it because it's hard to follow the law. Like, I never think that it's a good thing to say, well, it depends on how hard it is to come here legally. If it's hard, then yeah, you should totally just come here legally.
No.
Like, that's not I don't love that approach. Well, you just said it depends on how hard the legal process is.
It depends on which system, if we control, how hard we control this kind of stuff. Like, if we have a really difficult, and I'm not sure what the immigration process is here, but if it's like really difficult and if people if there's a bias and people are getting deported or not allowed in because of a bias, and then we should rethink that.
Yeah,
and change that.
I agree with that. Like, I think that maybe we as a country should be able to decide what the rules are that we use to allow people in.
But we have to.
But I think people have to follow those rules when they're in place. And if those rules are unfair and there's a problem with those rules, the answer is not, okay, we just encourage illegal immigration. The answer is we fight to change those rules.
Right.
And make
and then we should have, when that happens, we should have a process for someone who came here illegally, now that the rules are fair, to like kind of reapply to get in.
Yeah, no, I totally think, like, I'm on board, personally, I'm totally on board with what we were talking about at the very beginning about if, like, we've been relatively lax in the border control for a long time, and so people have been coming over and have almost been encouraged to come over because it hasn't been a terribly difficult thing to do. And so I think those people should be allowed to stay and move towards a path of legal status or citizenship or whatever. Like
Right.
those people should be able to stay here and move forward. But I get the argument on the other side that, look, that's fine, we can do that, but we, in exchange for doing that, we need to make sure that it's not just more and more people coming all the time, that we
Right.
have more control about
Yeah, we
who
can
comes in.
add more control, and we have to make sure the rules are free of bias when we add more control, and we like sort of rework what we already have. But the people already here, and the people who make it here free, if when the rules are unfair, should be allowed to reapply and not be deported because they were
Yeah, so
applied.
this is a bit of a detail too, but like, so a lot of people argue that like if you're caught here and you want to go back into the process, you have to go back and then
No,
apply.
that's not.
You can't stay here and apply. You
That's
can apply and you can move through the process, but you can't do that here in the country because the process is for you to get into the country, and you can't do that in the country. Apply to come to the country from in the country.
No, apply to legally be in the country.
Right.
Like if that.
And we do that. Like there are rules around that. I don't know. I'm a little less like, I think kind of a one-time kind of thing that says okay, but to make the argument that anytime once we've established what the rules are, if you can get in, then you get to stay.
No, like you have to. If there's someone here illegally, I mean, like it's gotta be. If we're doing what we're talking about here.
Yep.
Once we make the borders not harder to get through.
Yeah.
But harder to illegally like sneak through.
Right.
It might, depends on how many we have, but it might have to be a case-to-case situation. Because if something terrible is going on where you are, I don't want to put you back there.
Yeah, so that's a different thing than immigration. That's like an amnesty kind of thing. Like there are people who are allowed to come here and stay for a period of time because something bad happened.
Well, no, if someone immigrated because something bad was going on.
Well, but then, again, there's a process to do that. That's
Right,
separate
if
from
they-
kind of the immigration process, right?
If they don't do that process, they just sort of show up
Yeah, right.
and they don't go through this process.
I think there's always going to be
Yes, I
interesting
do.
questions, and I think that you
Yeah.
never send somebody back to a place where their life is in danger or
Right.
like something.
That's-
You have to find ways to deal with that. But I think as a general rule, that after things have been secured, you have to be stricter in the way things happen. I think there will always be exceptions, and I think that you can't just throw out all of the rules because you can think of an exception.
No, I'm saying, yeah.
I'm
There
just tossing
should
that
be
out there as a thing.
exceptions.
Like you have to, it's easy to think of exceptions, but you can't just toss out all the general rules because you can think of a way that those don't work.
Right.
Right.
General rules with exceptions.
Yeah.
There should be exceptions here.
Right.
And there's a lot of them, I'm sure.
So let's do a little bit more study on immigration
Right.
and read about what other countries do and read about some of these utopias that you love that have wide open borders and it works awesome.
You can't call them utopias. I'm scared.
No, I'm curious what countries you would be talking about that have wide
I know
open
they're in
immigration
Europe.
laws. And so that'll be a follow-up research assignment for you.
And maybe we'll do another one.
And we'll do a follow-up video and we'll talk about what you've learned as you studied immigration. Yeah.
Cool.
It's just a big thing in the news, so I wanted to have a quick conversation about it. And,
Not a quick one, but
at least plant the seeds in your mind to think about where you stand on legal immigration and border enforcement versus interior enforcement, and if you can slip past the border, do you win? And like those kinds of questions are really interesting questions, I think.
Yeah.
Merit-based versus random, I think, is an interesting kind of thing, or first come, first serve. Like all of those are interesting implementation
yeah, and we didn't
questions.
really get to talk about the thing. I'll just throw it out there really quick. Like, do we want to have a country where people can? Do we want to have a country where people come regardless of their worth, and people come here, and it is an open country, sort
Right.
of? Or do we want to run a country where we judge people based on their worth? Like, that is a decision that needs to be made.
And like, how do we treat citizens different than non-citizens is kind of the big thing. Like, we would never, at least I hope we would never say to an American citizen, oh, you're not providing enough value, and so you have to leave.
Right.
So that we can bring in this immigrant who does provide value. Like that's not part of this discussion. And so it's really about treating immigrants different than we would treat citizens.
Right.
And like how
differently.
Okay is that, and how, like, where do rights come from? Like, this goes back to a huge conversation about do people have rights, or do citizens only have rights that the government gives them and stuff. Like, that's a much broader conversation. But yeah, this is a good level setting conversation for this topic, and I definitely want you to read more about what's happening and see if we can do a follow up with you. Having, like, when we do the cold conversations, obviously you don't have a ton,
right?
But think about this some more, and let's do a follow up video and talk about it. I'm curious what your research will teach you about it.
Okay,
cool.
All right, cool beans. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to press the subscribe button to see more videos like this, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah, and let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Like, what's the best system? Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you support in this debate? I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about it too. Woo. I think we've probably got a pretty wide range of opinions in our subscriber base.
Yes.
If I had to guess. Yeah. So yeah, let us know what you guys think, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow.